Because if they are so focused on how much am I paying you per hour, then I think we're losing the big picture over here. And what I want to communicate is then, look, I'm charging you something which I think is a fair price, but fundamentally it's positioned in a way which is completely unapologetic. I'm not apologizing for that number which I'm putting in front of my client because I believe that I'm really bringing significant value to the table. And if that is reciprocated, you know what? That's perfect. Now you have a very good chemistry and the basis for a very successful engagement with your client.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm Pedro, and today's guest is Edward Klinger, a technology entrepreneur and CEO with over 30 years of experience scaling ventures in industrial IoT, infrastructure, and digital transformation. He's led companies through capital raises, multi-million-dollar contracts, and global deployments. Now he works with founders, investors, and leadership teams to accelerate growth, sharpen strategy, and build the clarity needed to lead boldly. His mission is to help organizations align ambition with execution so they can scale from X to 10X and beyond. Welcome to the show, Edward.
Thank you very much. Great to be over here.
All right, let's rewind a bit. You know, I like the origin story. So every coach has that moment where they look at their life and say, you know what? I guess this is what I'm doing now. You know, when was that for you?
Well, it's a great question. And for me, that probably happened about a year and a half ago. After running my technology businesses and being in corporate for about 30 years. In that time, having spent a lot of time with people, coaching, mentoring, advising, just as a matter of course, is what I did. But when I exited those businesses about a year and a half ago, I was wondering kind of what's the next stage? What can I do next in order to help and contribute? And that's where I was chatting with a few people and they said, look, why don't you help other people scale their businesses and grow and give some advice and support to people that are looking to level up. And that's where the idea going into this business professionally first really ever came across my radar screen. And it was a moment when I had some time available and I was kind of wondering, how is it best that I can give back now to my community and to society generally? And that's the phase that I'm now in.
Interesting. When those peers, they reached out for and told you, hey, maybe you should do this, right? So what I want to understand is the shift from I'm helping people to I'm building a real business around this now. When was that happen?
Yeah, again, it's a very good, insightful question because one can offer advice and guidance as a basic service. And that's great. And you can do that professionally as a coach. And you can probably build a very good business doing that if you structure it correctly. Now, for me, because I'm an entrepreneur by heart, and because I've always grown organizations, and my mantra has always been, how do I scale this thing? That question was already at the kernel of me forming my coaching business. And I realized that if I was going to go down, let's say, a conventional coaching route, which is perfectly fine, then by definition, that's not going to be scalable in the same sense as when you have a technology or some other business which can then grow infinitely because it's time-based and there's always so much time you have available to give to others. And so this idea of because by nature, I always want to challenge myself and challenge my client. How do we really disrupt this? How do we really take it to the next level? And if you ask that about coaching itself, that has been a fundamental area that I've spent a lot of time on over the last year and a half, putting together a framework, which I think is quite interesting. We can chat a little bit about it later, which complements the traditional coaching that we think of, as well as a method which is available, which is going to be, I think, quite disruptive to the coaching sector, which is something that can grow on a very scalable basis as well and doesn't require a time-based type of format that we traditionally think about.
Got it. Okay, so let's say after you got rolling, right? The coaching, who are the people that kept showing up? I know you got your peers, they reached out, you started a business, you turned into a business, right? So what I'm trying to ask is the ones you realized, okay, these are my people, because there are errors or trials. We're still trying to figure out, find our voice. But what was your ICP or ideal client profile that you thought, hey, these are my guys?
Yeah. Okay, so because I came from a technology background and a sector, then initially the people that I was closest to and that I helped were people from that same sector that had some independent advice and guidance and support for myself. And that made a lot of sense because that was the ecosystem that I'd been involved in for a long time. However, there was a key moment when I started off this business where I was introduced into some networking organizations, and I welcomed that opportunity to widen my sphere and connecting with other people out there besides the ones that were closest to me in terms of my tech space. And when I did that, when I went into those networking environments, I found that the people there were actually the people that probably would be the best beneficiaries, or the people that I wanted best to connect with, because they were the average type of people out there with small businesses or medium-sized business or even solopreneurs that desperately needed a lot of help, but couldn't exactly find the way in which they could secure professional type of coaching services, or maybe were not aware of it, or were perhaps unclear as to what that was. But that target market was one which I understood was the one that I immediately wanted to connect to, because they had a pressing need, number one. And number two, they would then offer, because there's such a wide basis, they would then offer this opportunity to create a coaching framework which was very scalable as well, because there's a lot of these people out there. So I think I've addressed the question in the sense that I started with people that were closest to me, but then immediately widened the net, because I felt that that net required or was open to growing and leveling up in very significant ways, but simply I didn't have the chance to do it beforehand.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, that's the coaching side, right? You started with people that knew, like, and trusted you. Then you moved towards that networking side environments, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what I wanted to talk about now is just to understand it's the part that nobody escapes, right? The marketing. So how do people usually find you? I know that networking probably helped, but how that usually works?
So prior to launching my professional coaching business, which is only about a year and a half ago, I had no social media profile at all. Nothing. I had no Facebook, no Instagram, no Twitter, no TikTok, my LinkedIn was very basic because, thinking back, I didn't really need it. For 30 years, I was operating in a very tight and clear space where this sort of social connection or ecosystem wasn't really that relevant, or at least I didn't think so. But now, fast forward to a year and a half ago when I launched my coaching business, I realized that one of the main problems or challenges that clients of mine would face and do face is visibility. How do you increase your visibility out there? Now, in order to do that, I needed to prove to myself and also to everyone else that I could improve my visibility. So how do I do that? And therefore, I immediately signed up for all of the platforms and started creating my profiles, and then put together a mechanism, a framework, because I come from a tech background, an engineering background, that could automate outreaches to using these platforms. And before I knew it, I was rapidly increasing my followers and my connections on LinkedIn and all of the other platforms as well. I made a conscious effort to get into how to increase visibility very significantly in a short space of time. And alongside that, I also launched my own podcasts. I did a lot of webinars, and I really tried to get out there, reaching with the messaging that I wanted to get in place as a kind of an experiment to prove to myself that that was possible. And secondly, to lay in place a foundation that could then be communicated and shared with other people that have the same problem. How do I increase my visibility?
It seems like you used your own structured way of thinking for the past 30 years in business to adapt to this new world, right? Something like that.
Exactly right, Pedro. One of the things I was frankly weighing when I went down this route was, okay, so I did a bit of research and found, yes, there are some other coaching platforms and institutions, and some of them were trying to attract me to get into their franchise network and become part of that. And I looked at them seriously, and I had discussions, and I understood the pros and the cons. But at the end of the day, I have my own frameworks, I have my own way of engaging. And because of that, I decided to independently grow the coaching business for that exact reason, because the types of things that I do and have done have always been independently put together, and then learning quickly from trial and error, seeing what works, what doesn't work, then moving from there. Now, I would say that in terms of sharing some of the difficulties or challenges in that approach, I would say that obviously if you go down this approach of being independent and doing it yourself, then of course you have then to build everything yourself up from scratch. All the frameworks, all the tools, all the mechanisms for engagement. Now, you can do that. There's no reason why anyone cannot do that. However, I think the critical element is that you actually have to have a passion or interest in doing that sort of thing. And it turned out from many, many years before when I had been teaching, that teaching came back into the frame over here, and that mindset, I wanted to teach and help people, re-emerged. And because of that, I actually enjoyed it and still enjoy it a lot. This idea of now reaching out to people on a wide basis and communicating with them using these social platforms.
Yeah, that makes sense. According to what you told me, and I want to step into your world, I want to talk about, if you don't mind, I want to talk about business for a second. It sounds like you have this mindset of pretty structured business. You've been for 30 years, so I want to step into that. So let's say people find you, right? They resonate with your work, and eventually they want to know what working with you actually looks like. So everyone builds their coaching business a bit differently, obviously. So when someone actually becomes a client, what does that experience look like right now?
Okay. So typically, having discussed with the client their needs generally and where it is they want to get to, typically I try to break it down into, first of all, two components. What is the overall goal that we're trying to achieve? And that goal typically will be something in the, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years, something along those lines. Of course, that can change, but what is the general goal that we're trying to get to over the next few years? And having understood that, we set that as the North Star. That's where we're heading to. And then we work our way backwards from that and understand, so what is it that we would have needed to achieve within the next 12 months, 6 months, 1 month, and so on. Typically, I try to break it down into 90-day increments. So what is it over the next quarter that we need to be able to achieve that aligns completely, of course, with the vision that we have, that North Star that we will connect into over the next 2 to 3, maybe 5 years. And in that period of time, these 90-day sprints, which is what I call them, in that 90-day sprint, what we're doing is we are having very concrete objectives that say this is what we want to be able to achieve within the 90 days. For example, suppose someone, as part of their business requirement, needs to raise venture capital or needs to raise capital for their business. Of course, I've done a lot of that in my past, so I've a very good understanding of it, and also the challenges, but put that to the side for the moment. So the objective is, within 90 days, that we will have an objection-free pitch. We will have an objection-free pitch, and we will also have lined up some of our early people that we want to pitch to. So in that 90 days, we set up that pitch, we refine it, we go obviously through all of the exercises of what makes this business special, what are its requirements, who are its customer segments, what's its value proposition, all the normal stuff that you would put into defining a pitch. And then we go through some dry runs in that pitch in order to test it before we then take it live. This idea of 90 days and very clear objective is fundamental to what I do. Now, it doesn't have to be to raise capital. It could be, for example, that the objective is, you know what, I'm selling my products in this country at the moment. I want to expand this product and now sell it globally. And I want to start in these next couple of countries. So my 90-day objective is to put together a plan for that and secure some early discussions with distributors or partners in these other markets where I want to get into. So that's another possible type of 90-day sprint. Another one might be, for example, the one we were discussing before. You know what? I have terrible visibility. I'm just not able to reach out with my product into the market in a meaningful way. So how can I, within 90 days, get a lot more impact and leads coming into my business? So then we will have a lead generation type of acceleration program in that 90 days. So that's the framework that I use in terms of the long term and also the short term.
Okay, so your work seems pretty hands-on and pretty customized with the 90-day experience. It sounds like you spend also a lot of time planning, right? Because since it's so customized, you need to understand what exactly are we trying to achieve, the North Star, right? So how do you think about capacity so you don't stretch yourself too thin? You know, we only have 24 hours in the day.
Exactly. I'm glad you asked that question. So in terms of how I do it, yes, it does require work. It does require understanding and very clear alignment with your client. And because of that, I'm not going to have dozens and dozens of clients. That's not going to work for this type of model because it's more intense. And as you say, it's more customized, and it's more embedded types of relationships which are being built. But those are the ones that I want to do because the objective with these clients is nothing less than to scaling them up massively. They're at X today. They want to get to 10X. They want to get to 100X. That's not a straightforward, simple type of thing that can just sort of be put into a framework and say, just follow this process over here. Now, because of that, because it is an intense process, it does have capacity limits. Absolutely. And I'll go back to what I mentioned before. Because of that, one part of my business is this, what I would call conventional coaching, which is the one-on-one, but intense type of efforts. And then the other one is something which I launched about 6-7 months ago, which is called the Scale Up Academy. And the aim of the Scale Up Academy is to address this idea that coaching can be done on a subscription or online basis on a self-paced format and not necessarily in the conventional way. They're both very good. Both have their spaces. However, the Scale Up Academy addresses that. And perhaps we can delve into the details of what that looks like later on.
Okay. So one thing that every coach wrestles, and I think this will be helpful for our audience, and it's with that at some point, it's pricing, you know, and I know that's taboo. We don't need to give hard numbers, obviously, and how to package their work, you know. How do you think about it today? And were there any lessons along the way that shaped how you landed there? Because it sounds like, I could be wrong here, but it sounds like we're talking about a program-based, right? But we see coaches out there doing hourly. I just want to understand from your perspective what ideally it looks like for your business.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So yes, this is an area which I think a lot of coaches struggle with, or there's always a conundrum. And this idea of that hours served and that there's a price per hour or cost per hour. And then that becomes the method by which you are engaging with clients. Now, I fundamentally think that is not the way to go. Because at the end of the day, what we are doing or should be doing is providing a lot of value to the client. And basically what we're doing is enabling these people to substantially either grow their businesses or change or transform the way they're doing things today in such a significant way that this is life-changing. This is actually, or maybe even disruptive. Now, so the value which ultimately we should be helping this owner or business leader create is something that we are contributing to in a very significant way. Or at least I think we should be as coaches doing that. And on that basis, I think this idea of an hourly type of rate is something we should be moving away from. And so the way I do it now is I have defined a package which says that this is the cost that it will be to engage my services for this 90-day sprint. And I have a couple of different tiers of that. One might be a bit more intense. One might be a little bit more less intense, but basically a couple of things. And that is, it's a number which is put out for that. Now, I do that in a way which is obviously commercially viable for a coaching business. I also do it in a way which I think tries to recognize or tries to get acknowledgement from your client that this is serious effort which is coming in here, and I value it because I'm paying this amount for it. I don't think we should go crazy with those numbers, but I'm also saying that we shouldn't necessarily commoditize ourselves with hourly rates as we put them out there. Now, at the end of the day, a client could say, okay, so what does this work out to in terms of, how much I'm paying you per hour? And, if we go down that route, Pedro, I begin to kind of second guess and think, is this client the right one for me? Because if they are so focused on how much am I paying you per hour, then I think we're losing the big picture over here. And what I want to communicate is then, look, I'm charging you something which I think is a fair price. And if we want to discuss whether it should be a little bit higher or a bit lower, fine, we can have that dialogue. But fundamentally, it's positioned in a way which is completely unapologetic. I'm not apologizing for that number which I'm putting in front of my client because I believe that I'm really bringing significant value to the table. And if that is reciprocated, you know what? That's perfect. Now you have a very good chemistry and the basis for a very successful engagement with your client. So my suggestion to other coaches and so on is, if possible, I know it's not easy, but if possible, try to stray away from the hourly type of mentality, which I think it's so easy for us to fall into, because basically it means that we then becoming commoditized.
Yeah, that's so interesting because you're connecting price with value and not necessarily with a clock, right?
Exactly.
And
exactly. Now the other thing I would add to this is the following. So you can also go the other way. You can say, okay, so I'm going to price based on the results, right? Based on the performance. Now, I would caution us as coaches as well not to go down that route either, because it goes the other way. Say, I will get paid if we succeed in this way and these things come through. Now, if we are consultants, yes, we can go down routes like that. But if we are coaches in a pure way, in a pure fashion, then I don't think we should really be tying our commercial value to those successes, because it's not necessarily in our control and we're not delivering any of it. We are simply supporting in a very meaningful way the client, number one. And two, we're telling the client, you keep all the upside. It's all for you because I'm the one trying to help you get from X to 10X to 100X. I don't want a piece of that action. I just want to be paid for my services to you. So you can see the two opposite ends of the scale here where we need to be very careful in how we do this. Now, again, we can be innovative. We can try to work different elements of this thing. But I try to keep things simple because I found it was the easiest way.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And of course, whenever we're aiming toward the next chapter, I know you've been in for a year and 7 months, right, in the exact coaching business. There's always something we're refining in the present. I believe you're also doing that currently. So what are you currently trying to improve or tighten up in your business right now?
Okay. So I think that, when we talk about coaching, Now, of course, coaching is a very wide term, and it has many flavors to it. But if I focus on what I consider to be my main approach into the market, which is business or executive coaching, and along that side, there is a strategic element. What is the strategy that we should be putting into place with the client in order to raise the capital or grow the business or expand into new markets or reconfigure your supply chain or commercialize intellectual property, whatever it is, it's strategic in nature. And that means that we are deploying what I would call an intelligence type of quotient into our discussions with the client, right? It's about thinking smartly. Now, I've realized over the last year and a half, and probably realized it before too, is that that's missing then two other key elements which we need to package together alongside the thinking smartly. And the second one is really to what I would call an emotional quotient. So you have IQ, and then you have EQ, your emotional quotient. And that is about really feeling deeply and connecting and managing your business in a way which means that you are aligned totally and emotionally with what it is that you're doing. And I think as coaches, we need to be not only mindful of it, but we need to be actually steering this, or at least be understanding that critical element, which of course is going to be relevant to the client. And then the third one is what I would call the social quotient. And that is the ability to build and sustain relationships. And it is basically a lot of this about that visibility thing that we were talking about before. How to reach out there. So what I've discovered is that although we can approach the market as coaches, let's say, with, I'm going to help you think smartly. And I got these frameworks, and I've got this way, I've got these processes, and this is what we're going to be doing. Yes, that's important. However, if we are not also clearly thinking about those other two elements, the social quotient and the emotional quotient, and finding the overlap between them, amongst them, then we're not actually going to get a client who's a true leader. And those two other elements are the elements that I have been working on I've put a lot of effort into that over the last few months to begin understanding and fitting it into the engagement that I have with people. And the net result is really that there is a much closer type of bonding between the client and myself in that case, because you're then really helping them in a more holistic way, as well as a very strategic way.
Right. So it sounds like we're trying to get rid of that first shell, right? So we can dive into the real problem, and that's very interesting. And I think that's very helpful also for people who are watching this. And I want to switch gears for a second, okay? And I do something a bit more fun. Not that this was not fun, but I want to dive into something more fun. If you're down for it, I got a quick game for you. Of
course, absolutely. Please go ahead.
We'll look at this through the lens of business investments. Things like coaching, training, marketing, team, masterminds, you name it. It's simple. I'll give you 4 prompts, and you tell me the first thing that comes to mind. If there's a story behind it, all good. So what's the first business investment you remember making? Coaching side, right?
On the coaching side.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it was investment in some online platforms, CRM systems, lead generation tools. Those are critical investments I made, yeah.
So what's the most recent one you made?
The most recent one I made was Go High Level, which is a CRM platform. And I've invested a lot in it because it has a wide range of features and elements in it. Most notably, the one which touches on my Scale Up Academy, which is this online platform as well.
Okay. And the best financial business investment you made, and why?
The best one. Okay.
Best one.
The best one. Yeah. The best one is a tool called Expandy. Okay. And now I'm not an agent for them or anything, but you asked me specifically. The reason I say that is because that is a powerful tool that is an adjunct to LinkedIn, and that enables you to automate your outreaches in a very professional and continuous basis. And that really enables you to, on a 24/7 basis, to grow more visibility and connections.
Okay. So that helps, right? So you're not wearing all the hats. That helps, obviously. So what's one investment you wish you could get your money back on? That you're like, that was a mistake, if you want to call it.
Yeah, I won't name anything in particular, but I'll go back to this topic of tools, because as coaches, and normally we're alone out there as coaches, right? So we rely on these tools. There's a lot of tools out there which don't necessarily live up to what it is that they're supposed to do. You sign up for them, and before you know it, you've paid a few months, and it's a drain. And then you have to go back and unsubscribe and do it. And they range across many different things. It's CRM systems, it's lead generation, it's about design packages for images and videos. AI is a real minefield, because in AI, types of systems, you can spend all your life just exploring what AI has to offer. And so you just need to be careful what it is that you choose, and when you do choose it, then go with it.
Right. And looking at those, how has your approach to investing in the business changed over the years, if it has changed?
Yeah. So in the year and a half where the business has professionally been run, probably the most important element that I put into the business is adding in a virtual assistant. And a virtual assistant has become really the backbone for enabling me to focus on the strategic side and the business relationships and the everyday coaching that needs to take place. So that's something that, wasn't necessarily thought about in the beginning, but when it did appear that all these systems and frameworks and so on were in place, that now someone else needed to come on board, or maybe even 2 people or 3 people in a supportive role in order to drive that machinery in the background, became critical. So in a way, I'm going back to one of your first prompts and saying that was actually a crucial investment decision, maybe even more important than the tool itself.
I love that. That's very, very interesting. And if someone listening wants to connect with you or follow your work at work, where can people find you and connect with you?
Okay, so I am on all the social media platforms. LinkedIn is the best one. Otherwise, one of the important decisions I made was to name my business after myself. So it's edwardklinger.com, because I believe in what I'm doing. I want to put my name to it as well. And so edwardklinger.com is my website. Everyone is welcome to go there and reach out to me in many different ways. I'm happy to always engage with anyone out there that wants to chat.
There were a few things you shared today that really stuck with me. I would say first, the peers that approached you, so we see that happen not that often, but when it happens, it's so interesting because it's so natural. It's like when you find a leader in a place and he is promoted to leader. He is not like he make that decision, I'm going to lead these people. It's just a natural flow of things happening. And that really struck a chord with me. Also, the 90-day plan, the structure and how you think, the way you think about structuring things, and you using those 30 years of experience and moving that experience into the coaching space, that also really struck a chord with me. Not that common, to be completely candid. And the last thing that I would pinpoint is obviously the VA, because we, being in a year and a half and plus, we see people that really struggle with getting that, that VA, and how that helps the coaching and how that take off your plate so much. So, Edward, I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you being here with us and sharing so openly today. Okay, so it was great having you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on here today. I hope it was useful for everyone.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.